Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show Rick Newman, who is a columnist for Yahoo Finance. He's based in New York. He's been covering business and economic trends, and he wrote a book called Rebounders, How Winners Pivot From Setback to Success. And Rick, that's what I want to talk about. Is it, a lot of times people are kind of winners and some are losers, but when things don't go well for you, what do you need in order to rebound?
You need a lot of things. You need some. It starts with having some experience at failing at something. And one of the reasons I got interested in this was I cover a lot of business people as part of my job, and you hear all the time, what a great success this leader is or that leader is. Took some startup and turned it into a $1 billion business. You don't often get the full story, and more often than not, when you ask these people, how did you get there? You find a lot of people who struggled at something, something that really might have challenged them and made them think, do I really want to be doing this? Took up all their time, caused them lots of questions about themselves. These sorts of crucible moments that people have had in business and in many other things. And then all you hear about is that they were successful. And, the old saying is most overnight successes aren't. So that's why I got into this, and I got really interested in hearing the stories of people who had really struggled at something before they broke through. And I think this starts at an early age when we're kids. I think there's a sort of an art to learning how to fail at very small things that you might say are age appropriate. And then learning that when you fail at something or when it doesn't go your way, the world doesn't end. You find a way around it, often, in fact, almost all the time. You can put it back together, figure out what you did wrong, try again, and get it right the second or the third or the fourth time. So that's where it begins, I think.
Let's assume that this is a little more sophisticated than just if at first you don't succeed, try again. And tell me a little bit more, maybe with one of the stories of someone that you spoke to or learned about. Why is it more than just what your grandmother told you?
It's not if you don't succeed at first, try again. In fact, a lot of people do that and they never succeed and they wonder why. And the reason is if you keep doing the same thing, that doesn't necessarily raise your odds of success. I'm talking about people who try fairly difficult and complex things where success is nowhere near guaranteed. So you're talking about persistence, which is just stick at it. And that's part of it. But one of the things I discovered is you need to know when to quit at something. And try something else, because if you're pursuing a bad idea, it doesn't matter how persistent you are, you're probably not going to succeed. And this is a real hallmark of what I call rebounders, is they are willing to self-assess and they're able to self-assess. And this is not something you're just born, either you have it or you don't. This is a learned skill the way math or learning how to play music is a learned skill. I mean, just about anybody can do it. But you have to be able to question, why did I do it the way I did it? Did I do it wrong? And if you're going to try again, try something different. So, try to figure out why it didn't work the first time. This is a lot easier to say than to do. But people who have this ability to almost clinically analyze what was the reason that something didn't go right, those are the ones able to break through.
So let's focus on this one word which you brought up, which was quitting. And there are all sorts of great expressions about winners never quit and quitters never win. But it sounds like you're knocking all my expressions down one after the other. Would you say that one's not true either?
I think that is not true. I think winners do quit. Now, winners, you have to make some distinctions here. What is quitting? I guess I don't want to get too semantic about it. But if you just give up without giving it your best effort, or if it's competitive and you just give up because you don't feel like seeing it through to the end, that is not a great attribute. That is lack of persistence, I would say. So I think it's a combination. The way to quit right, if you will, is a combination of persistence and analysis, understanding whether you are persisting at the right thing. And it's really important to say, if this is not the thing that I need to do, then I need to take everything I learned, maybe change my model a little bit, maybe change it a lot. And by the way, that's a way to sort of re-motivate yourself to give yourself a little bit of an emotional break, if you will. So you're not just, rushing into the same stone wall over and over, but you're taking a different angle. You're trying something new. Maybe it's not a stone wall anymore. Maybe it's a different type of wall. Sorry for all these metaphors. But if what you're doing over and over is not working, try something else.
Tried something new. Now, that makes a lot of sense, actually, in the world of investing, which is where I spend most of my time. I in real life, not on the show, in real life, I'm an investment advisor, and I try to help people to make smart decisions. And the question always comes up, well, I've got some stocks that are winners and some that are losers, or some funds that are better than others. Which ones should I sell? And interestingly, based on this quitting model, is that the academic studies seem to indicate that people who are need to raise some money are usually better off selling their losers, meaning they should quit. They should quit what's not working and holding on to their winners. It kind of sounds a little bit like what you're telling us here. Is that something you've seen also in the world of money?
I suppose. I mean, it's basically the question of cutting your losses, right? When do you have to just say, this is, I have to sort of just get out of this? And I think a big part of this is one of the attributes of rebounders I described, is you cannot get emotional about things that may actually be emotional to you. You have to find a way out of being emotional about them. I mean, you see this all the time in investing, and also with people who start a business and feel so emotionally invested in that business that they can't give it up. But sometimes that thing that you're so emotionally invested in actually clouds your judgment. This doesn't mean do not be emotional. Emotion is a very powerful, it can fuel success, but you have to be able to sort of step out of your emotion sometimes, and so you can, more objectively analyze what's going on. And this requires leaning on people that you trust, by the way. One thing about investing is it's the obviously difficult thing about investing is the investing climate changes all the time. So gold may be a terrible investment today, but in 2 years, because the economy might change, it might be a great investment. So that's obviously another variable. But yeah, I think many of things do apply to investing. And the way I'm thinking about a lot of this is, how does it apply to careers and pursuing prosperity? But investing's part of that too. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking with Rick Newman, who is a real success. He's in many areas. You've probably seen him on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. He's written 4 books. We're actually not talking about his most recent one, but we're talking about the previous one called Rebounders, How Winners Pivot From Setback to Success. So let's dive more deeply into this question about investment failure, because a lot of times someone fails once, twice, 3 times in investing, and over a career you may fail dozens of times. And you said before, you have to not follow your emotions, but let's be real. We're all people, and you fail enough times, you go, maybe this just isn't for me. How can you get yourself to stand up in the face of failure, like some of the successful rebounders that you studied?
Well, if you fail enough times at investing, you're not going to have any money left to invest, right? So you're going to be forced to try something new. Here's the way I think of it. Every time you fail, you need to learn something from that. And if you fail without learning, then that really is a failure. But if you fail at and learn something from it, that is not a failure. That's arguably a meaningful experience, a growth opportunity. And it's those things you learn from failure. You don't get opportunities to learn those things in many other ways. I mean, you can take classes and listen to people tell you stories about how they failed. You can read about it in books. You can read what all the best investors tell you to do. But you never learn better than when it happens to you. And every failure, whether it's small or big, is an opportunity to figure out, why did that failure happen? And the more you learn about why those failures happen, the more you are building a knowledge base, a database. In some ways, that's just experience and seasoning that is going to make you a lot smarter. You're going to be able to react faster. You're going to be able to anticipate what may go wrong better, and you will succeed.
Okay, so that was a good pep talk. Are you also like a high school, college, a high school football coach to help people go?
Not yet.
All right, encouraging people to do it. So what are there specific things that someone can do in order to develop personal resilience?
I think there are, and there's been a lot of research into this recently. If you pay attention to the psychologists, a lot of times they talk about grit Grit. This is sort of a new field of study that's become very popular. How do you develop grit? And, I think, we've talked about some of these ways. I think first you have to challenge yourself. If you have to be not afraid to fail. And one of the things I've just found personally is that the more you understand how many successful people have actually failed before becoming successful, it'll make you feel a little bit bolder about trying it. And, so you can inform yourself somewhat. A lot of people may grow up in a family or in an environment where failure is frowned upon, and maybe there's not much tolerance of failure. But, in the broader world, Silicon Valley, there's a lot of tolerance of failure in Silicon Valley. Now, what they say out there is fail fast. Don't do a slow motion fail that takes 10 years. If you're testing an idea and taking a chance, do it aggressively and do it as quickly as you can. And, you're in Silicon Valley, quite often you're surrounded by investors who understand, if VC, for example, maybe only one of 20 things they'll invest in will hit big. They understand the failures, but they also know when to get out of the failure. So that's the knowing when to quit model, because you've got resources there. If you're an investor, it's money. If you're an entrepreneur, it's your time and your effort and emotional capital to some extent, which is why it's really important to be as educated as you can and fail quickly. So those are some of the ways. I mean, I could sort of talk about this for a long time, but
look at that a little bit more closely, because I want to apply that. It certainly makes sense. But if you look at it from the outside, someone would say, well, obviously, if something's not working, get out. But the trick is to know, is it just not working, or are you having a bad day? And a great example would be, you look at a company like Apple Computer, which for years and years and years was doing nothing. And if someone was either working there or was investing in the company, he might have said, fail fast, let me just get out. But obviously, in retrospect, and no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but retrospectively, that would have been a mistake. So in real life, normal people, how can they apply this fail fast principle to making real decisions about real money issues that arise?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in fact, I would add that in real life, failure is not always binary. It's not like either you succeed or you fail. Quite often, you're on the cusp of something. So you're not exactly failing, but you're not exactly succeeding. And it's actually very difficult to know. Let's say you're in a dead-end career. Do you just sort of accept it and ride it as far as you can go? Or do you take the risk of starting something new, which might mean you have to give up the old thing and accept the risk and some instability for a while? So I actually think in real life this is quite hard to figure out. And that's why I got deep in the weeds with people who've been through this. Sometimes what happens is they just hit a crucible moment where they almost just cannot go any further. You'll hear entrepreneurs saying, all my credit cards were maxed out. I was barely sleeping at night. I was having nightmares. I was borrowing money. I just knew this couldn't go on anymore. And other times you'll hear people say, well, I sort of set some goals and deadlines for myself. And if I had not met those goals or deadlines, that's the point at which I said, I don't think this is working. So most of this happens in a gray zone. This does not happen. This is not black and white. So I think those are some of the ideas. You have to know the toll it's taking on you. You have to think about opportunity cost. Can I be deploying my own personal resources, whether it's money or investing, your own labor, whatever it might be? Can I get a better return on this someplace else? And how about, am I happy with what I'm doing? And if this goes on for long enough, this is one of the hardest things, is getting yourself out of the gray zone and going and hitting that moment where you decisively do something.
It sounds to me like what you're really saying is what I'll tell clients all the time when they ask me, what's the best investment? I don't know what the best investment is. I really think it has to be customized for who you are. And also to touch on what you said, which is critical, is at the end of the day, you got to be happy with what you're doing. So whether it's in investing or managing or your career, or you're on Silicon Valley and you're trying to fail fast, if you're miserable, then that's probably a very good indication that maybe you're not in the right spot. And a rebounder is someone who's going to say, I don't want to be miserable. I'm going to go find something that makes me happy.
Yeah, and again, this is, entrepreneurs love misery. They don't love it, but they are willing to go through it. In fact, in the closing chapter of my book, one of the 9 attributes of rebounders that I identified is they are comfortable with discomfort. So, nothing comes easy, no pain, no gain. I mean, we all sort of know that if something that's worth attaining is worth working hard for and putting up with some discomfort, but you have to set a limit and define these things for yourself. So how much discomfort is too much? You can't answer that in any general way. It's a personal matter, but you have to know when too much discomfort, when enough discomfort is too much, and define for yourself what failure is. Define for yourself what success is. And by the way, I think we all sort of continuously redefine success as we move along. We probably have grandiose notions of success when we're young. Then we realize, boy, that's not so easy. We change our thinking a little bit. This sort of happens continuously without us realizing it. You know what a lot of people do? They redefine success as they get more experienced and older to focus more on quality of life and less on acquisitions or material wealth. So know what success is to you. And this is something I think successful rebounders are able to do this. Even if your definition of success changes later, what is it? What is success to you today? And what is failure to you today? Once you kind of know what those things are, these things are a little bit easier to comprehend.
All right, I think that is a great question to wrap it up. Rick, we are just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, tell us, how can people follow you and follow your work?
I have a website. It is Rick J. Newman. That's Rick J. NEWMAN.com. And I'm a writer for Yahoo Finance, as you mentioned, and my work is there all the time. So check out Yahoo Finance. Finance work is there all the time. So check out.
All right, we will put links to that at the show notes of today's show. Rick Newman, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Doug. Great conversation.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.